Well, I'm certainly disgruntled. I don't know what the hell happened, but my video said it was going till 14:50 or so, and then it just cut out. So I don't understand what just happened. But I'm going to pick off where I left off. I'm going to pick up where I left off, and I'm going to finish this goddamn thing. So I apologize about this being a two-parter, but I'm not doing that 8 minutes all over again. And if this cuts out, well, it shouldn't, because I don't need that much time. I should only need like 6 minutes, 7 minutes or so. So I left off basically lack of opportunity should be addressed because social inequality being promoted in libertarianism doesn't exactly fit, regardless of whether it actually it is actually something that may happen in libertarian society naturally. That doesn't mean it's warranted or that it should be happening. It should be prevented. Social inequality is something that I think libertarians should be prevented. And so, yeah, I was saying that libertarians should talk about how libertarians should. Sorry, I'm just trying to get like this link that I had before up because I deleted it after I did the last video because I thought, well, I won't need it anymore because that video's done. But apparently, no. Yeah. So, where was I? Okay, social inequality. So I was saying that the lack of opportunities can be addressed and should be addressed, just not through state action, like affirmative action. And any social inequality that results from illegitimate authorities, from government privilege, from social oppression and cultural oppression should be eliminated. Any sort of natural social inequality that that just arises from natural and practical results, I suppose, is fine. You shouldn't really distort what is natural and what is supposed to happen to begin with. People shouldn't be messing with biology and stuff like that. So I want to talk about the social contract as an ideal form of the state of nature and racial contract as a more actual. As we all know, in brief, the Native Americans were not included in any sort of political or polity, as Aristotle called it, and he didn't really include them in, or people didn't really include the non-whites in the New England colonies and communities, as opposed to the whites who they did. So basically, that just means, you know, that the racial contract was more accurate than the social contract, because it wasn't just a contract between all people; it was a contract mostly between whites and not just non-whites. So I'm just trying to make the point that the racial contract might be more realistic to presume than the social contract, which is based on the treatment of the Native Americans, the blacks, and still the current treatment of the blacks by the police force, and so on and so forth. I still think it's heavily relevant. Manifest Destiny versus Nazi encroachment. My main point. I'm just summing up my points because honestly, I don't want to. This will be very half-hearted, because when I do things over again, they become half-hearted unless I really, really want to do them, and I didn't really want to do this over again, so I'm doing this half-heartedly. So I apologize for anyone who watching this, and I'm not giving my full description and stuff like that when I actually have more time to give a more full description. But I'm just so annoyed and frustrated with YouTube that I'm just giving half-hearted attempt to sort of sum up what I was saying. So Manifest Destiny versus Nazi encroachment, the main point was here was that besides the access and, basically whites were being killed by whites en masse, which frightened other whites, which got them involved in the conflict. When non-whites were being slaughtered by whites, they typically didn't get involved. You could argue that Jewish people are non-whites, but compared to blacks, Native Americans, and Chinese, they are certainly more white than non-white, or at least more white than non-white in comparison to those other groups that are part of the non-white sort of group. And the lack of access and such for these non-whites just proves how the sort of white supremacy was basically advanced through state policy and cultural policy. Now, by white supremacy, I don't mean your typical example. I'm actually going to use a quote by Hitler. Fantastic guy. I know everyone's a big fan of him. And I'm going to kind of demonstrate what I mean by white supremacy. He says, take any single area you like. Take, for example, India. England did not conquer India by the way of justice and of law. She conquered India without regard to the wishes, to the views of the natives, or the formulations of justice, and when necessary she has upheld the supremacy with the most brutal ruthlessness. Just in the same way Cortez or Pizarro annexed Central America and the northern states of South America, not on the basis of any claim of right, but from the absolute inborn feeling of the superiority of the white race. The settlement of the North American continent is just as little the consequence of any claim of superior right in any democratic or international sense. It was the consequence of a consciousness of right which was rooted solely in the conviction of the superiority and therefore of the right of the white race. So what he's saying right there is that the imperialism and all the conquering of savage lands and of the non-whites is basically fueled by white supremacy, which isn't necessarily straight out fascism, Nazism, or KKK. Social constructionism with race and gender, the sexist contract, racial contract, and critical race theory. Basically, my point here was that libertarians should offer critiques of the way that race and sexes are socially constructed. They're not completely socially constructed. They're also based on nature and biology. So it would be an oversimplification to just say they're social. They're just socially constructed. Instead, I would suggest libertarians mostly focus on the social constructionism of it, but also focus on how it's biologically truthful too and should be upheld in that way. So critical race theory, and if you want to call it critical sex theory, would basically just be critical of these ideas, but they wouldn't want to abolish them per se. Not necessarily anyway. So that's it. I'm not going to keep going, and I'm just kind of annoyed right now. And yep. So I don't know when I'll be doing my next video, but hopefully it'll be sometime next week. But I have to get in contact with the people who are driving me around and stuff like that. So yep. So I'll see you in the next video, whenever that is.